Hello, and welcome to this little channel. Thank you everyone for supporting the channel up until now. Today we will continue the story of Suzuki Satoru as Ainz Ooal Gown in the New World, as an overlord in Volume 15. I hope you will enjoy the journey together with me. Now let's get into the video. Prologue. The leader of the Theocracy, the Pontifex Maximus, those that held the greatest authority in their sects, the 6 cardinals, the heads of the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive branch, the director of the Research Institute, responsible for magic research and development, the commander-in-chief, also known as the Grand Marshal. Gathered here were the 12 members that made up the executive body of the Theocracy. This was where those with the highest authority in the Theocracy congregated, where they set out the general roadmap for the country. It was neither spacious nor opulent, and none of those in attendance were without a somber expression. Not many people would be joyous given the occasion, of course. The assembly was composed of people who would consider each other comrades, and they were familiar enough with one another to allow for some occasional humor. That is to say, the mood among them was once a lot more light-hearted, but not at this time. The air in the room felt as though it had frozen solid.
The Sorceress Kingdom has begun their invasion of the kingdom, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that it had started long before now. The Sorceress Kingdom is truly terrifying. The kingdom never had an inkling of their plans for an entire month. They have suppressed the Windflower and Clearwater scriptures, which had served as our eyes and ears. Had it not been for the Thousand Leagues astrologer, we might have discovered it even later. It is fair to conclude that the kingdom's fate is sealed. We don't have much time on our hands, so we should start recruiting adventurers as soon as possible.
We've already begun recruiting in earnest,
replied the Cardinal of Earth, Raymond Zarg Lorentzen.
Isn't it a waste to just allow the Sorceress Kingdom to plunder that country's magic items? Can't we get our hands on them somehow, especially the treasures of the kingdom, the Amulet of Immortality, Guardian Armor, Gauntlets of Vitality, and...
the research director said, as he counted up with his fingers, as if to emphasize the importance of the last item.
Razor Edge.
No, there's nothing we can do about that. The number of people we can deploy is limited. Even our own people within the kingdom will not be able to make it out alive.
The Sorceress Kingdom will be at our doorstep soon. Ever since that warrior captain died in battle, his replacement, the one called Anglo, is the one with the items now, right?
The Grand Marshal asked, to which the research director answered.
Brain, correct. Yes, if we could extract him along with those items, it would be for the best. He shouldn't be the type to run towards his own death, right? We might anger him at first, but he'll soon be grateful to us.
According to our investigation, he's not someone who would do that.
The Cardinal of Fire, Baroness Nadwa Santini, was one of the only 2 women within the executive body.
Your opinion of him is quite high.
The other woman, the head of the judiciary, said with a smile.
Indeed, we cardinals do evaluate him highly, but we know he's not the type of person to accept our invitation. That's why we gave the order not to contact him.
So he's the same as that warrior captain. Well, we fundamentally cannot understand the thoughts of people who don't look at the bigger picture and allow themselves to be controlled by such irrational emotions.
A few people glared at the head of the legislature as he spoke, so he felt the need to backtrack.
My apologies. Perhaps that was a bit too harsh. Still, in my opinion, taking into consideration the future of mankind, such reckless disregard for life is a terrible mentality to have. I will stand by my point no matter who stands against it.
I won't deny that.
The one who uttered those words was Dominic Iher Pardach, the Cardinal of Wind and one of the people who glared earlier.
However, just as we have lines we would never cross, so does he. Does Gelfi-sensei agree?
The research director asked, not fully convinced. Ginadine Delan Gelfi, the Cardinal of Water, an elderly man whose appearance was akin to that of a dried log, nodded in confirmation.
I shall not ask further on this matter then.
Well, I'm glad so many talents have come to join our nation. What is their condition?
Many adventurer teams were already on their way to the Theocracy. Most were mithril rank or higher, but they were also using the Clearwater Scriptures intelligence to invite people with potential.
Not very goo. No, it's just bad.
The one in charge of receiving the adventurers, Evangelista Dracowa, the Cardinal of Light, chimed in.
We may have convinced them to come, but the fact that they had to abandon so many people has left a thorn in their hearts. Or in other words, they're wimps.
One of the participants spoke in a way that let everyone know that the conversation didn't need to be so formal. But in response, Ivan gave a stern reply.
You should always be formal in front of your bosses.
He became flustered.
I mean, superiors.
He corrected himself. It was true that in a meeting strictly between cardinals, even Ivan was informal from time to time. But that was only possible because all 6 of them were close.
So, we think we should get rid of this thorn as soon as possible. But how?
The head of the judiciary asked. Raymond replied.
Well, if the thorn set in because they couldn't save people, then it can be healed by saving people. We'll send them to the Draconic Kingdom first. We'll have them fight the beastmen there.
Ah, I see.
Those around him said out loud. Their intelligence indicated that the Draconic Kingdom had become diplomatically closer to the Sorceress Kingdom and had even purchased undead from them. Terribly powerful undead at that. If they allowed this to continue, the Theocracy's influence within the Draconic Kingdom would diminish while the Sorceress Kingdom would only gain more sway. As a preventive measure, this proposal could be a good move. However, someone was still worried.
If we send the adventurers we recruited somewhere beyond our surveillance, they could leak our secret operations during the war. Would that not expose our covert actions to the Sorceress Kingdom? Would it not be safer to keep them within our borders for now?
That's likely not a problem. They know the situation in the kingdom. They regret leaving all those people behind. It's unlikely that people like that would ever work with such a cruel nation, though there is the possibility of them obtaining the information through mind-controlling magic.
Hold on. Compared to that, wouldn't it be more of a problem should the Sorceress Kingdom discover that our country has magic casters capable of using teleportation magic?
Indeed, that's true.
We've always pretended to use magic items to teleport people, but some adventurers might have seen through our ruse. Even if we were to impose a gag order on them, there's no way to know where and how information could leak. Maybe we should avoid revealing we have that card in our hand.
Ginadine de Langelfi, the Cardinal of Water, coughed a few times before he spoke.
HM, excuse me, while I understand your thought process. Is it not true that revealing our hand to our opponent can make them more cautious about acting recklessly? This move could also work to restrain our opponents. At least that's what I think.
I agree with Sensei's idea. The Triarch's magic caster is a great example of someone who's capable of teleportation. We don't need to be so nervous.
But how many would know about that? What kind of magic is the great magic caster of the Empire capable of is a question that even we don't have a definite answer for. Is it not?
Someone like that wouldn't care much for intelligence on teleportation magic anyway.
All sorts of ideas were suggested. The Pontifex Maximus felt that they would not be able to reach a decision if this continued on. So he decided on a simple vote. And so it was decided that they would deploy the adventurers to provide support to the Draconic Kingdom. That said, the recruited adventurers were no different from mercenaries in the eyes of the Theocracy. They weren't expecting any loyalty out of them. Thus, the leaders of the Theocracy gathered here didn't mind, even if they chose to stay in the Draconic Kingdom. After all, rescuing them from the kingdom wasn't to strengthen the Theocracy, but to avoid the possibility of strong humans dying in vain.
If we manage to develop the technique to create spell scrolls of the 5th tier and above, even something like teleportation magic will become easily available. But even though we have worked on it for centuries, nothing came of it, not even the smallest bit of progress.
One of the Theocracy's secret technologies was the manufacturing method for scrolls up to the 4th tier. This was something the surrounding countries did not have. The Theocracy possesses many other secret technologies, such as this. After all, they've been developing them for hundreds of years, all to protect humanity from the races surpassing them. For example, they also succeeded in creating the potion known as God's Blood. However, its cost-effectiveness was terrible, so research continued to this day.
Still, why would the Sorcerer King order such massacres, even if supplies en route to the Holy Kingdom were robbed? This was still an overreaction. What does the military make of it? The first reason is for it to act as a show of strength.
The Grand Marshal raised one finger. Multiple heads nodded in agreement.
Second, the Sorcerer King is an undead after all. There's a deep-seated hatred for the living in him, and he is controlled by that hatred. Perhaps some may hold that belief, but I disagree. Even if we assume he has been waiting for an opportune time to go to war, if we take into account his previous actions, this incident still feels strange. That's right. Even us from the military believe that line of thought leads to nowhere,
said the Grand Marshal with a stern face. But then other voices arose in protest, saying things like, "Then just say that without posturing, or you just wanted to copy Raymond, or you need to consider time and place before you speak."
And lastly, the most probable one, reason number 3,
he said as he raised his third finger.
To create a natural spawning area for the undead, like the Katsi Plains.
That is possible.
Someone murmured. The Slane Theocracy was a country that boasted an abundance of divine magic casters, so the highest echelon in attendance fully understood what the Grand Marshal meant. The Sorcerer King's plan was to probably expand that unholy land endlessly, and then absorb any undead that spawned there into his kingdom. Such a thing was normally impossible, but the Sorcerer King, being an undead himself, was an exception. That's all for today, and thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next part.